So back in our managed code example, the Windows Forms project, I've added two buttons here, one for calling the REST API getting back XML, and one for calling the REST API getting back JSON. So let's start out with XML. The first thing I need to do is get the URL for our query. So coming back over to our browser, it's here. So it's the site URL, and then /_API, and then our query. In this case, we want to get information about the current site. So our query will just be /web. So I'll go ahead and grab that URL, come back over here and say var URL is equal to that guy there. And then we need an object to make the service call. In this case, I'm going to use the web client object. So I'll say here var client is equal to a new web client. And then just add that using statement. And then we're making a service call, so I need to pass some credentials. So I'll just tell the client to use the default credentials, or use the credentials of the current user. Then we need to actually go get the XML. So I'm going to say var XML is equal to client.download string, and then we're going to pass in the URL we want. So that gets us our XML, and now we can use link to XML to get, say, for example, the title of the web. So the first thing we need to do is create a document. So that's xDocument. And again, I need to add a using statement for that. And actually, we want to use the parse method to parse out the XML. And then we need our namespace. So if we come back to our results here from our service call, we can see that the element we want is the value of this title element here. And this title element is in the D namespace. So if we come back up to here, that is this namespace there, schemas.microsoft.com/ADO/2007/08/data services. So we're going to need an X namespace for that guy. Again, let me just go into full screen mode and we'll just paste that in. And then we can go get the titles. So I'll say here var titles is equal to doc.descendants, and then the namespace plus the element name, which is title. That'll get us a collection of title objects. There should only really be one, but just to be safe here. And then we'll say var title is equal to titles.first. And then we want to get that value. And then once we have the title, we can just go ahead and write that out to our results list box. So that's results list box.items.add title. Okay, so now we can hit F5, and we can call REST API XML, and there is the title of our site. So that's getting the XML. Now let's take a look at getting the JSON. We'll come back to our design surface and then add the event handler for the REST JSON button. And the first part of this code is going to be pretty much the same as I had before. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. Now, of course, in a production application, I would make a method out of this, but I want each of these demos to sort of live standalone. So I'm just duplicating the code here. So instead of XML, we want to get JSON. And the way we tell the service that we want JSON is by adding the appropriate accept header. So I'm going to say client.headers. And then the header that I want is the HTTP request header, and I want the accept header. And I want to set that to application JSON. Now I also need to add in OData is equal to verbose. You may have seen some code that was built during the betas of SharePoint 2013 where you don't see OData verbose, but it actually is required by the server now. All right, so just having this code, we can go ahead and make a request to the service. So I'm going to start up Fiddler. And then now let's go run our application here and click this button. Now we won't get any results here in the list box, but we should get some results over here in Fiddler. Okay, so it's saying here the response is encoded, so it's going to click that and decode it. And then now I should be able to see the JSON coming back. So we can see that the result is in this object called D, and then all the properties are below this, and the property that we actually care about is this title property. Okay, so we're going to get an object called D, and then we're going to get the properties of the title object below that. All right, so coming back to our application, let's just stop debugging here. So the first thing I need to do is create a serializer object that can take the raw JSON and give us .NET objects. And as I mentioned, there's several different options. The one I'm going to be using is the JavaScript serializer. So I'm going to say here var ser for the serializer is equal to a new JavaScript serializer. And you can see that if I try to resolve that namespace, it's not going to work because I need to add an assembly reference. So I'm going to right-click on references and choose add reference. And then from the framework section, I want to add system.web.extensions. So system.web.extensions, go ahead and click OK. And now we should be able to resolve that type name. Once I have the JavaScript serializer, then I want to parse out our JavaScript. I want to parse out our JSON. So I'm going to create a dynamic object called item, and then I'm going to ask the serializer to deserialize our JSON. And then once I have that, then I'm going to, I need to explicitly, this is a generic type, so I need to say that what I'm going to deserialize that into is a set of objects. And then I'm going to write out the results into the results list box. So that's result listbox.items.add. And it's going to be item. Now, the way that this serializer works is that we get back a set of name value pairs. So each object is basically a key within the set of name value pairs. So as I mentioned, the object we get back is called D. And then it has a property on it called title. So I'm just going to use the indexers to get the appropriate values out of the set of name value pairs. And then once I've done that, I can go ahead and run my application and click on the button, and we should get back the title. Now, one thing I mentioned is that the OData verbose is required. If you forget it, and then try to run, you will get an exception. So the server is going to send back a 406 not acceptable. So as I mentioned, that OData verbose is required. So we just need to make sure we include that in our accept headers for our request going to the REST API.